Here's another common error that I have noticed in your papers that I would like you girls to pay attention to. Which and that. When do we use a comma? When do we use the word which? And when do we use the word that? First, the word which will be the beginning of an explanatory phrase about a part of your sentence. For example, cooking biryani, which is common in Pakistani households, is a very individualized and unique tradition. Here, the cooking of biryani is enhanced and explained in more detail, so in this case, we use the word which. If we took out everything in between the commas, the entire which phrase, we would still have a perfectly sound sentence. Cooking biryani is a very individualized and unique tradition. So you can see that which phrases are very commonly not essential to the meaning of the sentence, they just enhance it more. This, by the way, is called a parenthetical phrase. Now look at the second example. Cooking biryani that is unique to geographical roots is a time-honored tradition. Now you will notice here we don't need a comma in this case, as it is part of the sentence. The part of the phrase that comes after that is an essential part of the sentence. So in short, when we have a which phrase, it is to be set off by commas, whereas that phrases do not require a comma. A good rule of thumb to use as far as choosing whether to use which or that is, if the clause or phrase is not needed, use the word which. By the way, it can also be called a non-restrictive clause, and a restrictive or essential clause are the cases in which the phrase is an essential part of the sentence, and in that case, you're going to use the word that. In the example here, the that clause could be taken out completely as well, and the sentence would be fine, but it is more necessary to the sentence than the which clause used in the first example. Let's try a few examples to see if we can make it a little clearer. Here are some examples. Number 1. Cameron ate the cookies that, or which, I had just purchased this morning. Which word do you want to use for this sentence? Is the clause blank I had just purchased this morning essential or non-restrictive? Let me see. Senna, what word would you enter here? That's right. The correct word is that. Okay, Nabiha's turn. Number 2. His racing car, blank, is by far the fastest on the track, is favored to win the race. You have a hint here, so let me see if you can discover the hint. Oh yes, that's right, mashallah, you notice everything. Of course you notice the hint. You notice that there are 2 commas, and that the phrase is surrounded by the commas. So what is the answer? Great job. Which is the correct term here? Okay, ladies, finish up the remaining 2 problems. Number 3. Her brother's car, that, or which, Sherry has never liked, is finally up for sale. Which or that? Great job. Which is correct. And now finally, a bicycle that or which does not have air in its tires is essentially out of commission. Which or that? Yes, you got it. Now just remember, which clauses usually have commas, and that phrases do not need them. There are other words that can begin essential and non-essential clauses as well, so please keep this general rule in mind, but I noticed particularly there was difficulty with which and that, and they are somewhat similar. So now let's move on to the next topic, comma use. Now that we know the difference between let's eat grandma and let's eat grandma, it is clear to see that proper comma usage can save lives. But seriously, there are a few rules that you should keep in mind when you're using your commas. Some are very easy, and some require a little bit of deeper thinking when you're writing and reviewing your papers. Number 1, commas should be used to separate elements in a series. And this can also apply not only to multiple objects or nouns, but also multiple adjectives. So an example of multiple nouns would be I like mangoes, comma, pears, comma, and apples. And An example of the adjective separated by commas would be, he is a highly intelligent, comma, well-mannered young boy. Number 2, commas should come before a small conjunction to connect two independent phrases into one sentence. For example, I like to eat mangoes, comma, but I prefer to eat apples. And but here, of course, is the small conjunction. Other small conjunctions are like and, or. Number 3, transitional phrases that begin a sentence should be followed by a comma. For example, although I ate earlier, comma, I am still hungry. Which clauses or parenthetical phrases which we discussed earlier should also be enclosed within a pair of commas. I saw a red car, comma, which was dented and scratched, comma, after an accident on the highway. Number 5, a comma should precede a quotation. Jeannie stared at her and said, comma, quotation mark, I don't think that was a very nice thing to say, exclamation point, quotation. Notice that we don't need another comma just for the sake of quotation marks. And number 6, when there is a pause in the speech, there should be a comma in the sentence. Just like I gave you at the beginning of the example, at the beginning of the slide, let's eat grandma versus let's eat grandma. That comma is very important. Now I wanted to revisit number 2 from the previous slide, that commas should come before a small conjunction to connect two independent clauses in one sentence. So back to number 2. Make sure that when you turn two simple sentences into one compound sentence, you have a comma and a small conjunction in the middle. For example, I wanted to go to the store, comma, but we had to wait for my brother to return with the car. The comma comes just before the small conjunction, and both the comma and the small conjunction are sandwiched in between those two simple sentences. So we could say, I wanted to go to the store, period. We had to wait for my brother to return with his car. Those two sentences would be fine on their own, and they make perfect sense. But we can do that wonderful thing with grammar and English where we can combine those into one sentence, and sometimes that really improves the flow of your paper. Also, make sure that the phrases you are connecting are both complete sentences on their own. If the phrases are not independently complete sentences, meaning if you can't take out that comma and the conjunction and you don't have two complete sentences left, then there should be no comma between them. And you cannot separate them into two independent sentences. So for example, she wants to go to the mall and try the new flavor of ice cream at the frozen yogurt store. She wants to go to the mall is a perfectly sound sentence on its own. But try the new flavor of ice cream at the frozen yogurt store and try the new flavor at the ice cream and try the new flavor of ice cream at the frozen yogurt store, cannot be a sentence on its own. So for that reason, we don't need a comma here before the and. Finally, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about descriptive narratives. I liked your descriptive narratives, however, they weren't very descriptive. When you write a descriptive narrative, you as the writer should try to allow your reader to feel that they were enjoying the experience with you. As the author, you need to try and approach the same experience from as many different senses as possible. You know the senses: sight, touch, taste, sound, and smell. And now for the tough part. Abstract adjectives. You girls did describe your experience, but with abstract words like yummy and amazing. And as the reader, these words really don't mean anything to me other than that you enjoyed the experience. I don't have any sense of what yummy is to the writer. Okay, so I'm going to give you my example. So close your eyes and listen to what I say. Listen to what I've written. The bustling noise from the kitchen with pots banging and waiters yelling could be heard over the din of the conversation that filled the booths and tables of the dimly lit restaurant. A waft of spicy, sweet, and charred aromas filled the air as we were seated by a polite young waiter at a table that was lit only by a single red lantern dangling over the worn wooden table set with rudimentary silverware, napkins, and condiments. After our order was placed on the table, the spicy scent of curry and the charred aroma of grilled meat filled my nose and my mouth began to water. I took a piping hot, pillowy naan between my fingers and ripped a piece of the spongy bread off to dip in the warm, succulent curry sauce. I lifted the curry-soaked bread to my mouth, and my taste buds were flooded with the taste of garam masala, chili powder, turmeric, and cardamom. The spicy flavor lingered deep in my throat after the array of spices had passed my tongue, and I tasted some cooling cucumber yogurt that had a hint of lemon to cleanse my palate and calm the spicy burn in my throat. Okay, now open your eyes. As you can see, I was describing each step of the process, and I described the location in both look and sound, and helping the reader feel like they were sitting at my table. And trying to describe the food in as specific a detail as possible helps the reader to actually imagine that they shared my order with me. Describing the feel of the naan between my fingers helps the reader feel like they were having one too. And I think you can appreciate the difference between it was yummy and it smelled nice. Right, ladies? Okay, so for your assignment. Yes, I'm going to give you homework. I'm sorry. But for your assignment, I would like you to write another descriptive narrative for me. I want you to use an experience that is personal to you, something you've done before, and try to explain your experience to an American girl who has no idea about the places that you're visiting or the experience that you're experiencing, and really try to explain to somebody who has no idea what it's like to taste biryani for the first time or cook with your ummi in the kitchen. Okay, I have just one final point for you ladies. Spell check. Spell check, spell check, spell check. I cannot emphasize this enough. I can tell that you did not spell check your assignments before you turned them in because there were extra spaces or commonly corrected words that were not corrected. If you did use spell check before you sent those papers to me, your spell check application is sick and needs to see a doctor. Always, always, always check your work before you turn it in. If I am given another assignment that has not been spell checked, you will be in trouble. At the very least, I'm going to make you spell check it before you send it back to me. Spell check is your friend, and please use him. He's miskeen, so be kind and use this tool because it's very helpful. And don't just accept or ignore every suggestion the spell check gives. Actually look at the correction first, and please remember what we talked about. Transitional phrases, which versus that phrases, proper comma use, and, oh yeah, spell check! So for your assignment, I would like you to write a descriptive narrative that talks about a personal experience like eating at your favorite restaurant, or cooking in the kitchen with your ummi, or visiting an amusement park at Corniche. Also, I have listed here 10 adjectives that probably are new to you. Look them up, and I expect to find at least 5 of these words in your paper. It can be any form of the word. For example, I have written effervescent, and you can use effervescence instead if it fits your sentence. But I do want you to use these words. Hopefully this will also help build your vocabulary. So I'm excited to see what you girls come up with, and I look forward to reading your papers and learning about your experiences. And as always, if you have any questions or you need any clarification, please reach out to me. I'm here if you need me, and I do apologize for taking so long to get this presentation finished. Okay, I look forward to hearing from you, and we'll talk soon, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.